Now, an attempt to make sense out of an early Christian obsession with the heresy of serpent worship would require a shift in intellectual gear from worm's eye to bird's eye consciousness. In spreading our wings and taking off into the skies, we can distance ourselves from the clay or earth that cements us to minute detail and monocular vision, along with insularity that is itself an unwarranted byproduct of environments uniform in substance. From there we garner a greater appreciation of the earth's sheer magnitude, as well as worldly phenomena that cannot under any circumstance be ascribed or localized to any time or place. One such phenomenon is serpent worship, and particularly the worship of the serpent as the bringer of salvific knowledge. The religious and mythological discourse of such disparately related cultural groups as the Mesopotamians, the Hindus, the Africans, the Australians, the Native Americans, and the Nordics all abound in a colourful narrative detail implicating the serpent as either an agent of cosmogenesis, a wise teacher, or a powerful deity. When it comes to cosmic singularities of this type, the propensity to lead to diffusionist theory amongst New Age thinkers is great simply because the unconscious will of the active imagination is far greater than either the will of reason or that of deductive logic. In resisting this urge greatly, it might be best to interpret the all-embracing luminosity and ubiquity of serpent symbolism and worship as proof of the uniformity of psychological archetypes and their origination in the realm of the collective unconscious across all cultures. The collective unconscious gives voice to intangible concepts through sympathetic association with something that can be grasped and comprehended by the conscious mind, something material and tangible. One of the earliest, if not the earliest, to seek expression would have been divinity, the mystical plenitude behind the shadowy play of the material universe, and courtesy of our scrupulously observant ancient ancestors, the incorporeal divine found its material reflection in the snake. The latter is like the former in that it moves about in a manner that defies explanation, so with no discernible limbs, and appears to remain unscathed from the ravages of natural law through the periodic renewal of its skin. Within the confines of Greece proper, a geographical area in which the dualist stream of the redemptive Gnostic religion was immeasurably influential, serpents were sacred to Asclepius, the god of medicine and healing. The shedding of skin was considered by the pagan Greeks to be a profound gesture of perpetual rejuvenation, a phenomenon which incriminated a polar shift from a stage of corruption in death to one of fecundity in life. Death is usually preceded or induced by sickness, and health, on the other hand, is a condition indigenous to life. So the Greeks were merely ascribing homologous characteristics to the same personification of the divine, in this case Asclepius. Throughout late antiquity, the priests and priestesses of the Greek temples kept serpents in their inner sanctuaries and allowed them to slither over ailing pilgrims engaged in ecchymesis, an act which involved sleeping in the temple's inner sanctuary in hope that Asclepius would appear in their dreams to bequeath the cure. The most famous of these sanctuaries, or encomiterions as they would have been called, was the Asclepion at Epidaurus, or Epidavros if you want it with a Greek accent, in the northeastern Peloponnese, a site which also served as the healing god's cult center right up until the time that pagan practice fell into disfavor with the Christian patriarchs and was subsequently outlawed. Pausanias, a Greek traveller and geographer who was alive during the Great Gnostic proliferation, mentions a serpent that lived in the inner sanctuary of the temple at Olympia. He claims that the reptile was cared for by a virgin priestess who kept it gratified with dietary treats that included honeyed barley cakes. According to a well-established tradition there, the serpent was a predecessor of a Morlomithrin, which had metamorphosized into a slithering reptile of the earth. Seconds before a battle between the indigenous aliens and the invading mercenaries from Arcadia was about to unravel. The divine intervention, or what could only be described as a case thereof, was so extraordinary and upsetting that the Arcadian forces dropped their weapons and fled in a frenzied state of terror. Hence the alien city of Sisypolis was saved. Impressive and vibrant as it may be, An anecdote of this type can never be taken at face value, yet, in some strange ways, the outrageous element responsible for its failure to suspend narrative disbelief betrays an integral reverence, an adoration that was undoubtedly the motivating force behind its early and widespread association with all things divine. That said, it is unlikely that the Greeks inculcated the above-mentioned particulars of serpent worship in adherents of Gnostic sects like the Ophites or Ophians, who, like the Jews, would have been unconsciously conditioned to Iron Age premises that defined the predominant divine element in the cosmos and its material equivalent as male, as well as the supposition that the female was subordinate to the male in all respects. Moreover, modern research has never hypothesized, let alone substantiated, a theory that identified Greece as the breeding ground for the Gnostic religion or its various sects. The main branch of the Gnostic movement, the pantheistic stream that was heavily focused upon the hypothesis of emanations, was the result of intellectual contemplation of an Egyptian Christian called Basilides from Alexandria in Egypt. It would be foolhardy to assume that the philosophical deductions of Basilides that led to its formation weren't in some way influenced by the metaphysical concerns of the autochthonous culture, the Egyptians. In their primordial culture, the divine feminine had been assuming the form of a serpent and playing a pivotal role in the transmission of divine knowledge for millennia on end. Indeed, the Egyptian mythological and eschatological sources are rife with matriarchal sentiment. In the Egyptian pantheon, the goddess Selquet was sovereign of scorpions and snakes. Wadjet, a local goddess from the city of Dep, who later became patroness of Lower Egypt, was often depicted in therapomorphic form, sometimes as a one- or two-headed woman, at other times as a serpent with a woman's head, and at other times still in the guise of one of Africa's most venomous snakes, the Egyptian cobra. The motif's numinosity extends even to the Egyptian creation myth, to the cosmogony of Hermopolis Magna, where the female counterparts of the divine male-female Ogdoad, rising from the primordial first matter, are snake or serpent-headed. In the sphere of apotropaic magic, the goddesses Isis and Nephthys stand at the helm of the sun god Ra's solar barge and facilitate his nocturnal journey through the Egyptian netherworld in the form of asps. Isis in particular was inexplicably connected to magic, or Heka, as the Egyptians themselves would have called it. The goddess was often styled Great of Magic, or simply Great Magician, a title which bore witness to her ingenuity in discovering the sun god's closely guarded secret, engaging a form of magical evocation that strongly recalls the black art. Isis conjures a serpent demon using the god's own spittle mixed with some earth and directs it towards him with a vengeance. In turn, the serpent intercepts the unsuspecting god on his pilgrimage across the sky and proceeds to deliver its lethal bite. At this point, the plot thickens, given that the potency of venom cannot be dispelled from his dwindling body without requisite knowledge of its rudimentary ingredients. Ra's only hope of self-preservation is to seek the assistance of the entity's creator or creatrix, in this case Isis, who promises to help on the condition that he reveals his secret name to her. Salvific and divine knowledge, or gnosis, was called seer in Egypt, and Isis outshone all other deities when it came to this denomination because she was the only one who knew the sun god by his true name. From the evidence just reviewed, the central question as to whether or not there ever was a sect of Gnostics who identified as Ophites or Ophians must for the time being remain inconclusive, and unhappily so. What it does disclose, though, is that Gnostic cosmogony flirted openly with its Egyptian antecedent, and specifically with the matriarchal situation of the Great Mother Goddess in Egypt. Before her demythologization at the hands of patriarchal churchmen, and theologians who, having first described an allegiance between the two streams, vehemently combated a threatening ascendant in the latter, and subsequently decimated its written records. And on that note, I will see you next time for a lesson in Gnostic symbology. See you then.